So OG just basically means old guy. That's basically what it comes down to. I want you guys to think about something. That's going to come into play a little bit later in my session here, and that is, what would you do if you had a chance to not be supervised by your parents? If you had to, I don't know, like maybe visit your grandparents that were a little too old to keep up with you. You had more freedom, you had more opportunity to do things that maybe your parents don't allow you to do. I want you to think about that. Like I said, halfway through what we're going to look at here today, it'll make sense. But what kind of person would you be? What would your behavior be? Like your attitudes, what were the things that you dive into, the things that you spend time doing? What would those things be if you didn't have your parents there? If you have Christian parents, most likely they're going to be more attentive. They're going to have a higher standard for you. If you've been invited here and you yourself are not a Christian, your parents are not believers, your parents love you and they want the best for you. And so they're going to have standards for you, standards of behavior, moral standards, things that you're allowed to do, things you're not allowed to do, that kind of thing. But what would you do if you could dictate for yourself what you're going to do, right? You guys thinking about it? All right, cool. Pause that for a second. I want to read to you guys an old fable. Someone shared this with me like a long time ago, like OG time ago. Here it is. It's an old fable about 3 apprentice demons who came down to earth to finish their training. They were talking to their boss, Satan, the chief of the demons, about their plan to ruin humanity. So that was their thesis in a sense. It's like, all right, you guys finished all your training. Now I want you to present to me, what strategy would you use to destroy humanity? And so one by one, these 3 demons had to step up and present. The first guy says, you know what? I have a great plan. I'm going to tell humanity that there is no God. Satan pretty much said, fail, stupid. That trick won't work on anybody. There's way too much evidence in creation. There's way too much evidence in logic. There's way too much evidence even in their own bodies, in their own life, in their mind. Everybody knows God is real. So Satan's like, you fail, get out of here. The second demon steps up and he says, you know what? My strategy is I'm going to tell everybody there is no hell. Satan says, well, here's the thing. Everybody has a sense of justice within us. Humanity knows that for wrongdoers, there must be a way to rectify and to punish. So I don't know, you're not going to convince many with this idea that there is no hell, because most people believe that, good should be rewarded and wrong should be punished, right? It's like, duh. Everybody understands that. The third demon, after his other 2 buddies were rejected, kind of steps up, a little shy and reserved. He's like, well, I have an idea. Satan's like, yeah, that's the whole point. Step up, let's go. What is it? And he says, you know what? I was thinking, if I could just convince everybody that there's no hurry. If I could just convince them they can believe in God later. It's kind of like, what do you think about that? Satan's immediately, aha! Woke some of you guys up. Good morning. He's like, aha, that'll do it. Oh, man. Finally, someone's thinking. That's a genius idea. If I could get all these stupid little humans to think later, if I can get them to wait till later, that's excellent. So he graduates this little demon, and he's like, "Bae, you know what? You're going to ruin them by the thousands. Because they're going to believe they have plenty of time." Isn't that interesting? It's an interesting little picture. A lot of people think, like, yeah, you know what? I don't know if God's real, but, I'll deal with that later. Later when I'm older. And I'm too tired to do anything fun. Like my parents. Like, they're done. They don't want to do it. Like, they're not really chasing anything for fun anymore. Maybe then I'll start doing the churchy thing. Like, I'm stoked that you guys are here. I don't know who you are. I don't know if you were forced to come. I don't know if you were tricked to come. I don't know if you came because you said, you know what, man, I want to dig in closer to God. I want to get closer to the Lord. But I'm stoked that you're here, however you got here, because this is what I want to talk to you guys about. I don't know if it's up there. There it is. The biggest lie ever told. From my analogy there, from that old story, who wants to raise their hand and tell me what the biggest lie that was ever told in my story was? Yeah. You have time. Nice. Awesome. That's a huge lie. As a pastor, I've been a pastor for a long time. I was very blessed to start as a pastor very, very young. And that's why I'm still very, very young. And, I can say it's been a while. But here's the thing, as a pastor, one of my churchy duties, aside from, marrying young couples who are like all in love, which I've done some weddings, aside from baptizing or blessing babies or whatever, I've done some of that. The odd thing is that I have probably done, maybe 20 funerals. And it's a privilege to be able to walk with people as they're going through the grieving process and as they're going through this. But here's the thing about funerals. I've done funerals for 3-week-old babies. The casket is about this big. It's the saddest thing in the world. There's just like this. There's very little you can even say to anybody when they're having to go through that pain. Those parents, right? Those grandparents, they would say, we just wanted more time. I also had a privilege to do a memorial service for a 98-year-old man. And when I met the family, I actually thought they would all be whew, finally, Grandpa's gone, This dude was durable. He was hanging in there. But the crazy thing is that when I sat down with the family, I like to sit down with them and get to know them and get to, basically, I just want to know who it was that I didn't get to meet so I can represent them at their memorial service. And the thing that blew me away was everybody in this old dude's family was like, we just wanted more time. We just didn't have enough time with him. And I'm thinking to myself, just let the dude go. He was ready to go. But there was always the sense of, we're missing. There just wasn't enough time. Guys, this is what I want you to understand is that we do not dictate how much time we have here on earth. There's an old quote that says, only one life and soon will be past. Only what is done for Christ will last. We only get one life here on earth. We don't know how long it is. And that one life that we live here on earth actually has something to do with how we spend eternity. So check this out. If I told you, you only have 10 years to work, and whatever money you accumulate in those 10 years, you're going to actually live the rest of your life off of that money that you earned. You will no longer be able to work a single day in your life. You have to only work for 10 years, and then whatever money you earn, that's your retirement from here on out. And by the way, you're going to live to be whatever, 65 or 85 or 95. How hard would you work? Like, how many days off would you take? When your friends are like, hey, let's go to the beach. Well, I mean, really, what would your response be? You're like, I really want to, but I'll do that, on year 11, right? Like, I'll do that when I'm done. You guys, that's something that we have to think about, because we don't know how much time we have, and what we do here on earth has a lot to do with how we spend eternity. So, we need to be serious about how we're spending our time. Jesus shared a parable in Luke chapter 12 of a guy that he calls a fool. Luke chapter 12, verse 16, it says, then he spoke a parable to them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man yielded plenty of crops. And he thought to himself, saying, what shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops? So he said, I'll do this. I'll pull down my barns, I'll build bigger ones, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for yourself for many years. Take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. So, kind of makes sense. This guy lays out seed. He's a farmer. The crops that come in are abundant, way more than he can hold in his old little barn. So he says to himself, oh, man, you know what? I'm going to build a bigger barn, and I'm going to retire. I'm going to retire and be lazy. Verse 20 is interesting. But God said to him, what did he say? Fool. Some of you are like, oh, I didn't know God said things like that. Yeah. What would be a modern translation for fool? Idiot. Just straight for the jugular. Woo! Any other translation for fool in here? What was it? Stupid? Yeah. Some of you are looking around like, is my youth leader in here? Like, I got one. No, I mean, it's like, dude, you're an idiot. Hey, dum-dum. Stupid. Guess what? This is God speaking. Guess what? Tonight, your soul will be required of you. Tonight, you're dying. Then whose will these things be that you have stored up? So verse 21, so is he. What kind of person is he? A fool, a dum-dum. So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. So, dum-dum, you who say, I want to do this, that, I want to do X, Y, Z right now. Basically what you're saying is, I want to be broke spiritually. I want to be bankrupt spiritually right now that I'm young, and I want to be rich in dum-dum behavior. I want to be rich in idiotic behavior. Later, I'll be wise, when I'm old, like 30 or something. Maybe 30-year-olds are like, hey. Later, I'll make it right. But what is the biggest lie ever told? You don't have later. Look, what do we have? Right now. Because here's the thing. Yesterday's gone. You have right now. This is the only thing that you can guarantee you have right now. Being right with God is the most important thing, the most important decision, and the most valuable trajectory for your life. Everything else, secondary to being right with God, is how we, basically like how we kill time till we get to our real life. Our real life is going to be in heaven with God for eternity. What we're doing here on earth, you guys, is this: to know God and to make Him known. You have friends that didn't come to this conference. You have a lot of friends at school, at home, in your family, in different places. Listen, you know the Lord, awesome. But don't be selfish. Your role, the task, your mission is to make God known wherever you go. That's a part of why we're still here. Death comes for all of us, man. Aside from the rapture, 100% of us that are in here that have been born will die. What was that movie with the caveman cartoon? The Groods? Groods? Yes, it was a cartoon. One of my favorite scenes was Dad's story time. You guys remember that? Yes. You better listen to your dad because you're going to go out and then you're going to die. Like every ending of every story ended with the bloody hand, like then they died because they said no to dad or whatever. I love that. Here's the thing, like, we can't escape it. We can't. We're all going to die. The hard thing is that, again, we cannot buy into the greatest lie ever told. We cannot be stupid, foolish, or dum-dums. We can't. We need to be smart, wise, and say, like, what's going to happen tomorrow? What are you going to be when you grow up? Like, I don't know, dude, but right now I'm going to be awesome. I don't know what comes tomorrow, but right now, I'm going to do my best, man, to love God and to show off who God is to my friends at school. I love the testimony that was shared last night. And one of the favorite things about her testimony that she shared was the part where she said that at school she remembers a Christian friend that was shining his light. It was like obvious this dude loves God, and it stood out to her. You guys have that opportunity. I'll tell you what, I love speaking to teens, to youth. I've been doing so for a long, long time. But I do not have, and I cannot have, as much of an impact as you guys can. Because the reality is, if I step onto your junior high as some random adult dude, like, come here, kids. I want to tell you a secret, Like, what's like the janitor on duty gonna do? Like immediately, like, hey, stranger danger over here by the B building. Like, I'm not allowed to be there. Funny enough, you guys are forced to by the state of California. You have to go. You get to go. And you have an awesome opportunity every single day that you show up Whether it's to band practice, sports practice, or wherever it is that you're going, man, that you have connection with your peers. You guys have a radical opportunity to make an impact in the people around you. I want to share with you guys two stories, true stories, of two guys, one named Andrew, one named Edwin. So Andrew, he was 16 years old. He was a student at Viewmont High. And this is what it says about Andrew. Andrew had gone on his bike to ride in the afternoon after school and was on his way home for his sister's birthday celebration. He was walking his bike across the crosswalk at the bottom of an overpass, less than a half a mile away from his home, when a car hit him. The driver wasn't speeding, but with the sun in her eyes, she didn't see Andrew in her SUV. She hit him at full speed without braking. He hit the windshield and was thrown over the car, hitting the pavement and losing consciousness on impact. He had suffered a fatal head injury. Though emergency responders managed to revive some of his vitals, he passed away en route to the hospital. True story of this guy named Andrew. I think this was from like 2023. Another story, Edwin, 14 years old. Raise your hand if you're 14. Nice. Raise your hand. Keep it up. Raise your hand if you're 16. I like how some of you 14-year-olds put your hand down. I said keep it up, but, you know. So that's a lot of you guys, yeah? Edwin's story, 14 years old, West High. It was on a Wednesday morning about 7 a.m. while walking to high school. He was crossing the street when a commercial truck turned left and hit him. The truck hit his head and his chest directly. The blow was so strong that he did not have a chance to react. He died an hour after the crash. The driver responsible for his death was a 19-year-old young man who needed to wear prescription glasses in order to legally drive. That morning, he couldn't find his glasses. Isn't that crazy? The sad thing is, I can go on and on and on and on and on and on, reading story after story. I gave my life to Christ when I was 15 years old. When I was 14, I was playing football, and I blew out my left knee. Just absolutely destroyed my left knee. After practice, goofing around. Not even like scoring the winning touchdown or anything awesome. It was after practice, goofing around with my buddies, and my knee just blew out. Before that happened, I thought I was indestructible. I thought, like, man, I'm going to make it to the NFL, you know, like, all this ridiculous stuff going through your mind. I thought I was just going to be the best, the awesomest, and the betterest of ever forever. And when that happened, what happened was, as I realized, like, oh, I am not indestructible. Well, at the age of 15, I was in a new school, in a new town. We had just moved to San Diego. I met these guys during lunch. The very first thing they did was, hey, are you a Christian? And I'm like, what? See, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I didn't grow up with Christian parents. I did not grow up with Veggie Tales. I did not grow up with Salty the Singing Songbook for some of you old folks. I didn't know any of that stuff. And I'm like, no, or like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, these guys shared the Lord with me. After some things, other things had happened in my life, I came back and I'm like, I'm one of you now. I'm a church guy. I didn't even understand. But someone shared the gospel with me. And what they said was like, hey, man, listen, if you were to die right now, would you go to heaven or hell? If God's standards, God's rules rule, would you go to heaven or hell? And honestly, I was like, I would definitely go to hell. And my buddy says, you don't have to. I'm like, really? I already did all the stuff. He's like, yeah, but God will forgive you. And man, it was revolutionary. I gave my life to the Lord at 15, and I've been walking with God ever since. Now, I am not 15. And I've been walking with God for a while. Absolutely, I will tell you, absolutely no regrets in my life for serving God, for walking with Him. I have an amazing wife. She still likes me. Yeah, we've been married for a while. I have 2 adult children, a son and a daughter. They love the Lord. They like me still. And that's cool. It's a good goal as a parent. I have regrets of my failures. I have regrets of my shortcomings, but not a single regret of giving my life to Christ at the age of 15. I could go on and on and on about all of these young people who died too young and didn't have an opportunity to live life or to give their life to God. But, instead of being a total downer, I thought maybe I would share that little, picture of my testimony and share some testimonies of people in the Bible who gave their life to God. But the thing I want you guys to understand is like, man, I've traveled all over the world and spoken to, honestly, thousands of young people over all these years. One of the coolest things that I got to do for 10 years, like every year for 10 years straight, I burned out a passport going to Peru, grabbing kids off the street and doing a 3-day surf camp. Teaching kids that live in like the coolest place ever for surfing but don't have the money to buy surfboards. I would bring down surfboards every year, do a 3-day camp on the beach, teach them how to surf, talk about the Lord. Awesome. A lot of those people that gave their life to Christ at the ages of 14, 15, and 19 are currently right now the lead pastors, missionaries, and worship leaders that are writing worship music today in Peru. Pretty awesome. The speaker last night was talking about the bummer of not having kids and not being able to have a legacy of, Christians under her life, because she couldn't have kids. But I tell you what, man, like, I've got a lot of spiritual kids. And these guys are pouring into people, and they're giving their lives to the Lord, and they're growing, and they're sharing, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. No regrets for giving your life to God right now. All you're doing is showing that you're smart. You're not a dum-dum, an idiot, or stupid to say, I have today. Like, today is a day that I can do this. Well, I'm going to share real quick a few people. Probably the coolest, I think, because we do have a record of a guy named Daniel from about 14 to 17 years old who made a stand. And we see him again at about 90-something years old. It was at the time that he was 90-something years old that he was challenged to make a stand for God. If he did not, if he chose not to stand for God, he could live. If he chose to stand for God, he would be thrown into a lion's den. And Daniel's like, let's go to the petting zoo. 90 years old, he's like, they look super adorable. Throw me in there. He said, no way am I going to give up. I'm here to stand for God. Well, Daniel chapter 1, verse 5 and 6, it says, as the story goes, Daniel, his three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, these three young Hebrew men were taken captives when King Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian Empire came in and spanked Judah, and they took the city, they conquered it, and they took captives with them. Young people that they could mold and shape into their ideology, into their philosophy. Kind of like what's happening to you guys every day, man. The culture just trying to like mold you. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and Daniel, these guys said, nah. We're not going to indulge. We're not going to take in the king's goods. Remember I asked you at the beginning, what would you do if you didn't have your parents around and you had somebody else around that would just give you whatever you want, right? This is what happened to these guys. And so, verse 5, it says, and the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies. I love the way that's phrased, because that's basically all of the goodies of Babylon. All the indulgences of Babylon. And they had wine, which he drank, and 3 years of training for them. So this was the plan. They're going to train them up, brainwash them basically for 3 years. So at the end of that time, they would serve the king. Now, verse 6. Now, among those sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. You guys might know them by their Gentile names that were given, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But these guys were there. Verse 8. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief that he might not defile himself. So Daniel and his boys said, hey, listen, we're Jewish, we're Hebrew, we are living for God. The guy in charge could have just said, hey, guess what? You're a slave, now eat what I give you. That was a risk. They could have been killed right there on the spot, but they said, hey, we don't want to take in all of the stuff that you guys are always eating and taking in. We want to serve God, even as slaves, and we want to honor God. The guy in charge of them says, no way. You have to eat what I give you, because if you show up in front of the king and you're all skinny and frail and fainting because you're not eating the meat and the wine and the candies and the vapes and the gummies and the whatever, you're not jumping into all the social media time, you're going to be behind, Everybody else in Babylon knows what the funniest TikTok is right now, and they all got the moves, and you're going to show up when everybody gets together, and you're going to be like, I don't understand. That's a one-timer, dude. And they're like, you're going to show up and look stupid if you don't fit in. You have to eat what we're giving you and consume all the social media that we're giving you to consume. We have to give you the vape and the gummies, and you got to just take it, man, like everybody else is taking the stuff, so you might as well just be like everybody else in order to fit in, so you can stand in front of the king and fit in. And Daniel says, hey, let's make a deal. What if you give us 10 days? We're not going to be on social media 24/7 like everybody else is. We're just going to just say no to the vaping and the gummies, and we're going to say yes to God. If we're weaker and dumber than everybody else, at the end of 10 days, you can test us. Then we'll do and we'll eat whatever you give us to eat. And the guy's like, fine, 10 days, man, that's all you get. Well, it's cool. At the end of 10 days, the good guys win. So you guys that don't know the story, you can imagine the reason why I'm even bringing it up, right? Is because they won. At the end of 10 days, they stand before the king, they show up, and these guys rolled in, and they're like, yeah, what's up? They looked stronger, smarter. They answered things. They were smarter. They looked more good looking, like they had acne problems. Gone. They just rolled in and were like, boom. And the king was amazed. The guy in charge of them was amazed. Afterwards, they're like, you guys keep doing your thing. God ended up raising up these guys in the Babylonian Empire. Daniel actually served under 3 kingdoms. Like he was around during the rule of 3 different kings. Every one of them kept this dude around because they saw his character, they saw his integrity, and they saw that he was way above the rest. Why? Because he wasn't a sellout. Because you guys are being forced every day to decide. Am I going to play church on Sunday? Or am I going to, and go to school and be a total fake and sellout? Or am I going to actually pursue God? And as I pursue God and as I make a stand for God, God's going to stand with you. You're not alone. This is why I love camps and I love what these guys are doing here with Truth Quest. Because you might come from a small church and feel like all the Christians in my life are a bunch of old people. So obviously Christianity is for old people. And I'm the only 12-year-old. I'm the only 10-year-old. I'm the only 15-year-old that wants to walk with God. And when you go to school, all your peers are just acting foolish, stupid, idiotic, and dum-dums. And you're like, well, I guess I got to be like everybody else. And then you start acting the fool. And every once in a while, you get a glimpse of yourself when you're laying in bed and you're alone with your thoughts and you're like, I'm stupid like everybody else, I guess. Why do I act like that? Why do I front this way or that way? It's because daily you guys are getting pulled. Are you going to sell out or are you going to stand? The greatest lie I ever told is, well, you can stand later. No, you stand now. What allows you to stand later is standing now. In Daniel's life, it's awesome because his whole life is recorded right there, and we can see him standing as an old dude, 90-something. And we can go back and say, well, yeah, of course he's going to stand for God then because he stood for God all the way. Guys, here's the thing. Some of you might be here thinking like, this is my last conference. I'm not even going to go to camp. I'm not sure I'm going to go to church on Sunday. This was like my last shot because I'm such a failure as a Christian. I'm not holy. I'm not perfect. Everybody else around me is like so put together. I keep struggling with things. I keep getting pulled in by my friends at school, and I just like buckle. I collapse. You know how you make it to 90-something and still stand for God in the face of a roaring lion? It's not by being perfect. It's not by being super religious and perfect. It's not because you read your Bible every single day without fail. You guys want to know what it is? It's God's faithfulness. And you believing that God's going to still be faithful to you. Because you are going to fail. And some of you who are thinking like this was your last thing and you're going to quit, don't believe the lie. Don't get punked by these stupid little demons running around trying to speak things into your ears and into your, put things in front of your eyes. You make a choice. You make a stand. There was another guy in the Bible named Joseph. This guy's cool. You guys that have grown up with VeggieTales and in church, you remember him as the guy with the coat of many colors. Joseph had to make some radical choices. Probably the biggest thing that he had to conquer was when he was a slave living in the house of a man named Potiphar. Potiphar's wife was coming on to him, giving him eyes. She's like, "Hey, Joe, what's up?" And he's over there sweeping like, "I don't know, just..." Next day, she's like, "Hey, did you see my TikTok I posted yesterday?" And he's like, "Oh, no, Mr. Potiphar doesn't let me have a phone, She was coming on hard, strong. And, culturally, she was probably young, probably around Joseph's age or so. Potiphar, a rich guy, probably an older dude, with like a trophy wife situation, right? And obviously she was miserable. We do know the Bible does tell us Joseph was a stud. Easy. Whoa. But, there he was, man, looking real good, sweeping. She's like, "Well, he looks way better than Potiphar sweeping, And one day, she set the whole thing up, man. She grabbed him because she kept telling him, like, "Hey, why don't you come over here in my room and sweep the corner of my room?" And he's like, "Oh, no." No. Finally, one day, she set it all up. She had all the other servants out of the house. She's like, hey, Joseph, there's this mouse in my room. Oh, no. Help. Joe's a cool dude, so he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah." Runs in there and looking for a mouse. And she grabs him. And he was like, "Oh, no." So he's like shaking her off, probably did some jiu-jitsu and was like, "Get off of me." And he takes off. He's so freaked out, not that he's going to get caught. She set it all up so that he would never get caught. Think about that, young man, young woman here today. If Satan set you up with the opportunity to do something wrong and guaranteed you're not going to get caught, what would you do? That's a true test, right, of who we are. Well, Joseph's like, "Ah!" He runs out of there. The way I picture it in my mind, he's like halfway down the driveway. He's so freaked out, halfway down the driveway before he realizes, like, it's really windy. Because he's like, "Huh." And then he realizes, I am naked. That crazy chick took my clothes. He just ripped his cloak off of him and he took off running, just running for his life. The coolest thing about that story is that, when confronted with the situation, when she was still like tempting him and like calling him in, he says, "How can I do this grave sin against God and my master?" He's like, "Man, Potiphar's been a cool dude. He's been a great boss to me. I can't wrong." Well, the cool thing is that makes sense. Like, I can't wrong him, but I love the fact that what kept him sober, what kept him clear-headed and clear-eyed was the fact that he knew that first he answers to God. That's what kept him straight. And then, I don't want to hurt the people around me. Because if you only consider, I don't want to hurt the people around me, then Satan and some little minion of his will make sure that there's no way you're going to get caught or get hurt or hurt people. And then you're like, well, if you put it that way, like there's nobody else in the house. We turned off all the nanny cams in here. No, none of that would have mattered to Joseph. Because he was like, God knows. And I answered to him, and I can't do that. You guys know about King David. As a young man, he stood for God. There was a giant cursing God. David shows up with some pizzas for his brothers out in the battlefield. Everybody's hiding from him. The giant would come out, and everybody's like, hide! And everybody's hiding. And David hears this guy cursing God, mocking God, and he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Who is this dude? Running his mouth, talking trash about God. Why hasn't anybody slapped him? Well, he's big and scary, you know. David's like, no, I'll take him out. The king comes out and says, obviously you're young and stupid. You can't take him out. And he says, well, you know what, man? God helped me kill a bear. God helped me kill a lion. And then the king is like, well, take my armor then. You know, if you're going to do it, if you're going to die, you might as well die looking good. And he's like, he looked like dumb in all that big armor because David was a little dude. Shout out to all my little friends out here. You do matter. But, man, David went out there, he kicked butt, right? Took out the giant. David had some regrets in his life, some failures in his life. He made some bad calls. He struggled as a parent. He was, kind of a lame dad, actually, in some areas. But, man, he walked with God all the way to the end. He's considered a man after God's own heart. A guy with failures, a guy with weaknesses. So for you who have been considering quitting on God, understand, man, that the Lord isn't surprised that you're failing. He's with you, man. Don't quit. Don't give up. Walk with God. When you fail, get up. Allow Him to restore you and strengthen you so that you can keep walking with Him. Like I said, I did that. I've done that. I'm still doing that. And man, God is good when we're not. Man, God is strong when we're weak, when we're lame. He's still there. Awesome. Strong for us. Here's the thing, I'll close with this. Some of you've seen on the streets people in the gutters, man, people in freeway embankments. We had an outreach to the homeless community in our area. We're inundated? I don't know. I'm an ESL kid. I don't know what I'm saying. But we were just flooded by all these people, and so we would go out there and invite them to a hot shower and a hot meal. And it broke my heart, man, because a lot of younger people wrecked. And I couldn't help but think, how many of these people, think about this with me, how many of the people that you avoid on the street like that you dodge because they stank, how many of them do you think thought when they were your age, man, I can't wait when I grow up, I'm going to give my body to dirty old men so I can get some money to buy drugs or so I can get some money to get myself some Taco Bell. Rough, right? How many of them do you think thought that right now? How many of you are thinking, when I grow up, this is who I want to be? I want to live under a bridge on a pile of trash, looking for the next person I can sell myself to so I can get something to drink. Anybody? That's your goal? No. And here's the thing. That was never the goal for anybody that right now is living on the street around your house, around your community, around your gym, around your school. Every single one of them thought oh man, when I grow up, I'm going to be a firefighter, a Marine, or a Navy SEAL. When I grow up, I'm going to get married. I'm going to have an awesome family. They all had great dreams. But what happened to them? How did they end up like that? Quite honestly, disgusting, broken, trashy, literally living in trash. How did that happen to them? They believed the great lie. And they gave themselves to the king's delicacies. They're like, my parents don't want me to do this, but like, I'm going to do it anyway. God says this is wrong, but like, yeah, really though? Really, God? I mean, just one time, just a little bit. You see, they gave in to the lie that like, later when you're old, in your 30s, you can get right with God. But the thing is that, the number one way to guarantee you never become an alcoholic, you know how that is? Huh? Yeah. You guys, I'm going to share a secret with you. I actually drink as much as I want to drink. I do. Yeah. I smoke as much pot as I want. You guys want to know how much I drink? 0. Here's the thing. I love my wife. I don't have to be drunk to come home. Yeah. You're like, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I like coming home. I like what I'm coming home to. Makes a big difference. I'll just say that. But these people that have their lives just wrecked, they gave in to the king's delights. They gave in to the king's delicacies. They said, well, I just got to be like everybody else, I guess. This is what's going on. No. You guys have a choice. Are you going to stand for God, or are you going to sell out? I promise you, if you stand for God, you're still going to go through hardship. You still might experience death around you. You still might experience loss. But in the death, the sorrow, the pain of this life, man, you have this amazing assurance. You can remember this moment and say, this is as close to hell as I'll ever get. After this, I win. So really, it doesn't even matter. Because even the hardest thing that you face here, you're like, it's not so bad because I know God's with me. So you get thrown in the lion's den. I just taught this actually at my church. It was like, the lions didn't touch Daniel. The next day, the people who ratted Daniel out and falsely accused him and did this whole thing, they were jealous of him. The king grabs them and throws them into the lion's den. The crazy thing, I forgot, I guess I forgot I knew it. But it says that their bodies, their bones were broken before those dudes ever hit the ground. Their bodies were shredded to pieces. I'm a very pictorial guy, and I'm like, whoa. Why did that happen? I believe it was God just saying Daniel didn't survive because the lions weren't hungry. Daniel didn't survive because the lions looked at him and thought oh, this old dude beef jerky? I don't know. I don't know if I want to work that hard. No, it would have tore him up. But the reason they didn't is because God intervened supernaturally. Here's the cool thing is that God does and will show himself strong on your behalf every single day. When you make a choice to stand, he will stand for you. Let's have the band come up. Here's what I want you guys to do. I don't know. I believe in being awesome. So, with your eyes open, all of you here today that say, you know what? I'm tired of being lied to by these stupid demons running around my school or running around my head or my thoughts or running around my phone. I'm going to make a stand for God. I want you to physically stand right now and say, I'm going to stand for God because I want to pray for you. Anybody here that says, yeah, I don't care. Awesome. Good to see you, dude. Yeah. Anybody else? You are conquering your own demons in your head, you know, when you do something like this. And funny enough, it's really easy to stand here today because most people here love Jesus. If you can't stand here, you're going to suck at standing at school, honestly. So make a stand, man. Let me pray for you guys. God, we thank you for this opportunity we have to rally together as believers, as brothers and sisters in Christ, to be able to stand hand in hand, arm in arm. God, I just picture a Roman wall of shields standing side by side, unbreakable. God, we want to be those men and women who stand for you right now, today. Because, yeah, you know, it sounds awesome to be able to stand for you when we're old. But we're never going to get there if we don't stand for you right now. The world, the pressures, even our own flesh wants to sabotage us and take us down. God, help us stand for you like we're standing right now. Help us stand for you tomorrow, next week, next year, 10 years from now. God, how amazing it would be to see a testimony of every one of these young men and women here today being able to take this spot here and be able to share their story of how they made a stand for you and how your faithfulness to stand for them is what brought them through all of the struggles of this life. We thank you, God, for your faithfulness. Be honored in our lives, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Bless you guys.
Let's give it up for Sammy, guys. Come on, come on.